chug, 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 chug,
Hello, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly before playing children's card games. Alright, we got a lot to talk about in the upcoming episodes with Commander Masters, Wilds of Eldraine. So, we're just going to take some time to do a fun little rules trivia, where Blake and I will ask each other questions of different scenarios that you might see in a game of Commander, and they'll get increasingly more difficult, and we've each asked each other 6 questions, so 12 questions total. We are novices. We say that every episode. So, we're anticipating that we're going to learn a couple new things, I think, aren't we?
Oh yeah, I seriously doubt that I'm going to get every single one of these questions you're going to ask me correct. I don't think
And
so.
I know that I am always right, so I'm sure you'll need to change your answers, Blake.
Alright. Yeah, I think the point of this episode for me is just the idea of we've been playing all these years, right? And we still don't really know the rules. We're not really high level judges, but between your experience and asking other players, you can usually get through a game of Commander and still have a fun time.
Yeah, and Commander is all about tabletop magic, or kitchen table, should I say. So it is kind of you gotta go off of what you think most likely happens. Because, yeah, a lot of us aren't, even level 1 judges. And Magic is quite, just to put it plain and simple, the most difficult game out there. Just the rules are so intense. The game constantly is changing with every set, every new card. A lot goes into this game. It is certainly not easy. Reading the card explains the card. Oh my god. Don't even get me started.
I'm excited about this. It's going to be two drunk guys going to the bar, doing trivia, just having fun. That's what I'm hoping this episode's going to be.
For sure. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, and embarrass ourselves...
Yes.
What are you drinking?
I stopped by and picked up a cider. I was feeling a cider. So I got this really tall can by Portland Cider Company. And the name of it is called Kinda Dry. A refreshing English-style cider with a crisp, dry finish. It is a nice, solid 6.9% alcohol by volume. And, it's a cider. It's pretty good. And I'm already feeling it because it's been a little while since we've done one of these episodes.
Yeah. It's a treat to be able to talk about something that isn't a new set or whatever is in kind of the now or what's the hot topic. So this is something, the hype. We don't give in to the hype. We don't give in to the we don't follow the crowd. We're hipsters in a way.
I don't think that's true, but alright. What about you?
Not at all. I am drinking a Sauvignon Blanc. It's from one of my favorite wine brands, Prophecy. They tend to have really pretty bottles with these Art Nouveau illustrations on the front, and then even better, the actual wine tends to taste pretty good. And my fiance picked it up for me right before we started this, so she had excellent timing. Thank you very much, Annie.
Oh, thank you. So is it still cold?
No, it was... I put an ice cube in the glass to help chill it, because white wine does not taste great when it is lukewarm.
Oh, okay, that was a trick question. I was just I was getting you prepped for these trivia questions.
Yeah. So, disclaimer, I believe... I don't know about you, Blake, but so I did take some of my questions off of some scenarios I found on Reddit. Judging for the Win which is a popular YouTube channel where a judge will kind of do this too, where he talks about card interactions every day, kind of comes up with a new rule scenario. A few of these come from like some Twitter things that I've seen. So that's kind of where I found a lot of these questions. How about you?
That's a good way of doing it. I also did sort of a similar thing of just seeing like what was out there in online spaces. That way, like, you're able to 100% know the correct answer, especially if it's a more difficult, hard question, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But there are definitely some of these where like I am still like 95% sure. Like I'm there's a small chance like I still like got the final answer wrong, but I tried to put an effort to where they are correct. There's just a small chance like maybe in my explanation when like I do finally tell you the answer, maybe I don't quite use the proper language to properly explain, but you know, it's fine. And then there are certain situations where, oh, this has come up for me personally, like what's the answer? I don't know. Or like we've been talking in the group chat and then I say something and then like y'all are like, Blake, you're dumb. Like that's not how it works. I'm like, it isn't? And you're all like, no, like this is how it works. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I don't recall saying you're actually dumb to your face. But very similar, yeah. So I don't think I will do my best to try and explain it. I know the correct answers, but yes, the verbiage that we might use may be a little off, but I would say that like the general scenario of what happens is still in the realms of being correct. So we're like probably 80 to 90% correct on most of these. We just might be a little off. And we're not going to be citing like Rule 704.12AB. You know, we're not getting that in depth.
If you came to this podcast with that mindset, boy howdy, are you in for a disappointment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people come to this podcast with some kind of mindset, and then they're like, "Wow, I'm disappointed." Okay,
I'm glad.
Yeah, you're glad.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess like, you know, this isn't going to be a terribly long episode, so why don't we just like dive right in? So we're going to start with the easy questions, medium questions, hard questions. Blake will give me 2, I'll give Blake 2, and we'll just go back and forth, and we'll see how long that takes.
Yeah, and feel free to play along, listeners. See how well that you do with this. I think there should be some card images if you're watching this on the video, but we will try to read these cards out loud just in case you're unfamiliar with them as well. Yeah?
Yes. I will definitely read at least the text that is most important. Kick it off, Blake. The ball is in your court.
First question, guy. You ready?
I am.
I'm going to paint a picture here. Your commander is Asika, god of the tree. I will read it for you. It is Asika, god of the tree. It is 1 green. For a legendary creature, god, it's a 1/4 with vigilance, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color. And then it says other legendary creatures you control have vigilance and tap, add 1 mana of any color. And then the backside, because this is a double-faced card, is the Prismatic Bridge, Wooburg, legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card. Put that card onto the battlefield, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So that's your commander, right? And so, can you use Jeweled Lotus to cast the other side, the Prismatic Bridge side? And for those who don't know, Jeweled Lotus is an artifact that costs 0 mana that says, tap, sacrifice Jeweled Lotus, add 3 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast your commander.
Alright, so my answer is yes. The commander is the card itself, so Asika and the Prismatic Bridge are both technically my commander, meaning the mana that I get from Jeweled Lotus can be used to cast the backside. However, because Jeweled Lotus creates 3 mana of any one color, that is a part of my commander. That means I could choose 3 white, 3 blue, etc. That would not be the most optimal for me to cast, or use the Jeweled Lotus to cast a Prismatic Bridge, unless if I am trying to pay for something like Commander Tax, because then I could put one of those colors from Jeweled Lotus into, let's say, the white, and then the other 2 into Commander Tax. So, basically, my answer is yes, I can do this, but it's just a bad play, or not the most strategic card that I would put in my deck.
Ding, 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 ding. 100%. That was a very good explanation. Actually, better than the one I was going to give. To be honest. Yeah, like, especially if this is your commander and you're planning to play the Prismatic Bridge side, then, yeah, like, this is maybe is not the most optimal. Like, if you're playing, like, a Sika build that really uses that green side only predominantly, then sure, maybe Jeweled Lotus. And like as you said, it's good with Commander Text. Turns out Jeweled Lotus is busted. But getting back to the main topic, yes, you are 100% correct. You can play Jeweled Lotus to cast your commander. Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that one's a little bit tricky if you're not a commander player, right? And I will say, like, a number of my questions are commander related. We are a commander podcast, so I can see how certain listeners who maybe don't play commander a whole bunch might find a number of my questions a bit frustrating, even though this is technically a quote-unquote easy question, right?
Yeah.
All right. You ready for one more from me? All right. So, you are playing your Narset Enlightened Master commander, and that commander costs 3 blue, red, white. It's a legendary creature, human monk, 3/2 with first strike and hexproof. Whenever Narset attacks, exile the top 4 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may cast non-creature cards exiled with Narset this turn without paying their mana cost. Alright, so that's your commander. So, throughout the game that you're playing, you have cast various equipment off of Narset's ability. That's just how your deck is. And so, at some point, her power and toughness are now, let's make up a number, let's say 25, 27, alright? Very big, very large. On the next attack, you trigger Narset, and one of the cards you exile is Chandra's Ignition. Chandra's Ignition is a sorcery that costs 3 red that says, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So, you then cast Chandra's Ignition in your second main phase, because that's when you can cast it. Does this kill all your opponents because of commander damage? That is your question. Does it kill all your opponents with commander damage?
No. Commander damage is specifically and only through combat. Even though the commander, Narset, is dealing the damage through Chandra's Ignition, and the quote-unquote amount of damage would qualify for 21 points of commander damage, since it is not actually combat damage, no other opponents would die.
And to clarify, like 21 points of commander damage kills an opponent, right?
Through combat damage, yes.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. Like completely. Yes. I chose to add this question because I play Voltron a lot. This is one of my favorite archetypes. And oftentimes, like, you know, on a frequent basis, someone thinks like, okay, I do this and like I kill you. It's like, actually, it's only through combat. Yeah,
that was definitely something that I had to learn early on, but it makes sense. It's kind of like an extra hoop, or otherwise Perforos would be broken.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example. Like which Perforos is it?
God of the Forge. You're right. I had to clarify. There's 2 of them.
So, quick side note: I've started to get to the point where like I do like say the full names of commanders now, just because there's like 3 or 4 versions of a certain character, like Narset, for example. Like there's a whole bunch of Narset commanders, or like just Narset cards in general that play in EDH, right? We're going to talk about one later on this episode, right?
Say Gandalf. So, which Gandalf?
Yeah. Yeah. So, getting back on track, you are correct. Very nice. Good. You know your commander.
Thank you. Alright, are you ready, Blake?
No, but here we go.
Alright. So, Blake, your first question is... I'm painting the scene.
Alright.
In your graveyard, you have a land. In my graveyard, I have a land and a sorcery. I have Tarmogoyf, who I am declaring to be attacking you. You try to bolt it, lightning bolt. What happens? Now, Tarmogoyf is a 1 green creature Lurgoyf that says Tarmogoyf's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. Lightning Bolt is red, instant. Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to any target. So at the time of attacking, Tarmogoyf is a 2/3 because you have land and sorcery in graveyard. 1 plus 2 equals 3. That is its toughness.
Thank you for spelling that out. Yes.
Well, I wrote it wrong initially, so that was,
okay.
I just had to be clear.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's quick side note. That's kind of what was funny. Like doing this, it's like, all right, we have to be very specific and clear. Turns out that's kind of difficult, and like we had to reword some of our questions just for the sake of like making sense to the other. And I just found that really funny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Like I misread some of these and like wrote down the incorrect thing, and you had to be like, Blake, before we record, you need to fix this because that's not actually what I wrote. And I'm like, I can't read. All right.
Reading the question explains the question. What do you mean?
Okay, what's the eroded text for this question? Alright, so Tarmogoyf. Okay, also quick side note, why is there Tarmogoyf? Like, people don't play Tarmogoyf in Commander.
We're playing Modern.
Why are you doing this to me? Alright,
I'll tell you why I chose this question once you give me your answer.
Alright, I'm just stalling because I'm not 100% sure of my answer. So, Tarmogoyf, as I understand, as you mentioned earlier, is a 2/3 at the beginning of all this. Because of the land and the sorcery in graveyards. So, Bolt is then cast, and importantly, Bolt resolves, which assigns 3 damage to Tarmogoyf, which you'd think like, all right, it's a 2/3, like it takes 3 damage, it's gonna die, right? But as I understand, like damage kind of doesn't kill the creature, it's kind of delayed until like the end of like the cleanup. And so before that happens, Bolt has resolved and it's now in the graveyard, and Bolt is an instant. That's a new card type that affects Tarmogoyf, raising both its power and toughness up by 1. And so when it does finally come around to clean up, it's no longer at like 0 toughness, it's now at 1 toughness, and it lives through the turn. That's gonna be my answer.
Ding ding ding. Most of what you said is correct. The one thing I'm now kind of curious is, cleanup doesn't happen until the very, very end of the turn. But
is
because
the end of combat?
No, the cleanup step is at the end of turn. That's when like damage is removed.
Yeah. Okay.
But because Lightning Bolt resolves, state bait actions allow Tarmogoyf to check, what's in the graveyard, and that there is a time in there where it sees Lightning Bolt before it then sees that it has enough points of damage to die. Okay. So Lightning Bolt is in the graveyard, meaning 3 types of cards are in the graveyard. 1 plus 3 is 4. Lightning Bolt dealt 3 damage, so it has 1 toughness at the moment.
Okay.
So when it hits you, it is actually a 3/4, or sorry, it's a 3/1.
Mm-hmm.
And you just made it stronger to hit you.
Oh yeah, that's true, isn't it? So
yeah. So not the best play. And so the reason why I actually asked this question is because it's actually a pretty infamous scenario that happened in a modern tournament where somebody tried to bolt a Tarmogoyf, not realizing that there wasn't a instant already in the graveyard, making it now strong enough to live through the bolt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I mean,
Yep.
I wasn't 100% certain, so I can totally see it.
I mean, this was like a pro tournament. But like the thing is too is like, you know, in EDH you have four graveyards you have to worry about because you worry about your own.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to check these things at all times when like cards like Tarmogoyf are on the field.
Yeah. It's always it's funny in Commander where like it's like what's in everybody's graveyards, and everyone just pulls it towards the center of like the pod, and everyone's like shuffling through, and it's like some people are more transparent than others about like what's in the like graveyard. It's quite funny sometimes.
Yeah.
Woo,
all right.
I'm happy.
You got to have more confidence in yourself, Blake. Is question 2. All right. You cast Inquisition of Kozilek targeting me, and I'll read it real quick. So it's black sorcery. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it with mana value 3 or less. That player discards that card. So you cast Inquisition of Kozilek targeting me. You have to declare the target when you cast a spell.
Alright.
So I'm like, I don't have anything. I'm not going to counter it. We will let it resolve.
Okay.
So you look at my hand, and you see I have a lightning bolt. You choose the lightning bolt. I'm like, I'm going to cast lightning bolt in response. Can I do this? Why or why not?
Okay. So I did not look up anything for this. I am purely going by like what makes sense to me, and I could be wrong. I don't think you can cast Lightning Bolt in response after Inquisition of Kozilek has resolved, because once Inquisition of Kozilek resolves, the way it's all the text is in a single block, it all has to resolve at once. There's no window of priority that you get between revealing your hand and me choosing a non-land card. There's no window of priority that you gain to then cast the lightning bolt.
Ding ding ding. You are correct. So, yes, as the spell resolves, Inquisition of Kozilek, the whole block of text that says target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it with mana value 3 or less, that player discards a card. There is no point in there that I can say, hold on, since now I know what you're choosing, I'm going to use it. I could not do that. So if I wanted to cast Lightning Bolt after you targeted me, so you say, I target you, guy, I can then say, alright, I'm going to cast Lightning Bolt in response. Then the Inquisition will resolve, and Lightning Bolt will no longer be in the hand, but you could choose something else.
Sweet.
Yeah. Pretty good. Alright, so Blake and I are each 2 for 2.
Alright, I'm glad, because this is the beginning easy part.
Yes.
Alright, so we are moving up a layer of difficulty. We are moving up to medium difficulty questions. Here we go, guy. So, you are playing like a mono blue commander deck. You cast Snapcaster Mage, which is a 2/1 creature, human wizard, that costs 1 and a blue with flash, and says when it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. So you cast this, and then you target Cyclonic Rift in your graveyard. And Cyclonic Rift, for those who don't know, is 1 and a blue for an instant that says return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. And then it also has Overload, 6 and a blue. So you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing any instance of target with each. So if you overload it, it's going to say return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It's like a board wipe. So, guy, you cast Snapcaster Mage, target Cyclonic Rift. Can you spend 7 mana to overload Cyclonic Rift from your graveyard?
Hell no. And the reason why is because when Snapcaster Mage targets the Cyclonic Rift, it gives it flashback equal to its mana cost. So it basically says flashback 1 into blue. The overload cost cannot be chosen at time of casting, basically because overload doesn't allow it to be cast from the graveyard. So in order to even cast it from the graveyard, you just have to cast it for the 1 into blue cost. Meaning you can't then replace that with the 6 in a blue.
That's pretty much spot on.
Yep, thank you. I was waiting for the ding ding ding.
Ding 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 ding.
Thank you.
I won't deny you your ding 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 ding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this one comes up a lot, just because in Commander you often see Cyclonic Rift quite a lot. It's one of those cards that only really sees play in Commander, not other formats, just because it's like an asymmetrical board wipe at instant speed, and 7 mana really isn't that difficult to get to, right? So it's just such a incredibly strong tempo card.
Mm-hmm.
It's even like a little bit salt-inducing, and some play groups choose not to play it, but that's kind of a separate conversation. Like, it sees a lot of play. It's just sort of like, yeah, you just gotta be ready for a Cyclonic Rift. At least, so yeah, thank God, because otherwise, like, people would be overloading Cyclonic Rift even more if you could do something like that, like with a Snapcaster Mage, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So thank God for that. All right, very nice. But now, wait, there's more. Another medium difficulty question. You ready?
Yes.
All right, so let's say you have Composer of Spring and 6 enchantments on your board. Composer of Spring, at time of recording, is a fairly new card, so I'll read it out. It is 1 and a green for a creature, Centaur Bard. It is a 1/3 that has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 6 or more enchantments, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So, cares about enchantments, lets you kind of ramp if you cast enchantments, maybe even cheat creatures into play if you have enough enchantments. That's basically what the card does.
Alright.
So, again, you have 6 enchantments on your board. You cast an enchantment and it enters the battlefield, triggering Composer of Spring. You then put a Fang of Shigeki, which, trying to keep things simple here, Fang of Shigeki is a single green mana, 1/1 enchantment creature snake ninja with Death Touch. So, Fang of Shigeki is put onto the battlefield tapped off of the trigger. Does Fang of Shigeki trigger the Composer of Spring's Constellation ability as it enters?
I was really curious why you picked Fang of Shigeki, and now I realize it's because you just didn't want to read a full new enchantment card. Like, this is one of the cleanest, easiest enchantment cards you could read.
I could have probably made this question a lot more difficult if I chose a more complex card than Fang of Shigeki. I was trying to keep it, like, simplistic.
Well,
Fang of Shigeki, like, famous Commander staple,
Yeah. From
So
the very, very old Kamigawa set, Neon Dynasty.
Yes.
Alright, so, okay. Fang of Shigeki enters tapped. This will trigger Composer of Spring again. This would work for any enchantment creature, because the Constellation effect doesn't specifically say when you cast an enchantment. It's just an enter to the battlefield. So when Fang of Shigeki enters the battlefield through this effect, Composer of Spring will see, alright, it's an enchantment creature. So, and the condition has already been met, where you could then either put another land or creature onto the battlefield, and then you could continue to just dump a bunch of enchantment creatures onto the field if you met this condition.
Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. Very nice.
Hey.
Perfectly said, yes. Where you trigger the Composer of Spring, you put in Fang of Shigeki, and because it's an enchantment, it triggers Composer of Spring again. which is very silly. The context behind this question is I'll tell my side of the story, you can tell yours, but like we were in the group chat and I'm like, I really am considering Composer's Spring for my Sigarda Host of Herons Voltron Enchantress deck. But like I'm gonna like I was reading like this comment online, this person like clearly doesn't understand the card because like you can't just like trigger it over and over off of itself, that would be dumb. And then like you and Park were like, no, Blake, that's how the card works. Like it's entering the battlefield. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me this thing triggers off of its own trigger? Like I can put an enchantment and trigger Composer Spring off of itself, basically, and just keep a chain going if I have enough like enchantments in hand. And you're all like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, this card is great.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it plays out for you after you play some more games with it. But that basically was what I was gonna say. I was like, Blake mentioned earlier, group chat, kind of like going over some new cards. I'm the one who like told him this answer, so I was pretty confident in what I was saying. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy, like, because I was like, I don't know, like my Cigar deck's like kind of a tight deck list. I don't know if Composer of Spring really makes the cut. And then you learn like, oh, it triggers off of itself. If you just have enough steam with it. And I'm like, this baby's going in. And I think I've played with it once, and like you were in the game, like, and it didn't go crazy, but it did me good value where like I cheated, like I got to the 6 enchantments needed, and I cheated in like a free like Dragon Lord Dramoka, just like a free 7 drop.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, this is great. So like sometimes you play Commander and you think you know how things work, and then your friends are like, no, you dumb, this is how it works, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But I'm happy for you, because it's like one of those scenarios where you kind of hope that that's how it works, but you don't think so because of the rules. But it actually turns out that it does work the way you want it to work. So good for you. Like it's only upside for you there. You learn a little, and you get a good card.
Yeah. All right, those are my 2 mediums, so hit me with it.
All right, Blake. So, first medium question. I have a Crystal Vein. And Crystal Vein is a land that has tap, add colorless to your mana pool. It also has tap, sacrifice Crystal Vein, add colorless colors to your mana pool. Alright. I cast Wild Growth, which is an enchantment, costs a green, says enchant land, and it's an enchantment aura. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional green. Alright. If I were to use the second ability on Crystal Vein, which is tap, sacrifice Crystal Vein, add colorless colors to your mana pool, how much mana will I produce, is the question.
So I'm not entirely certain about this. I'm going to say that you only produce colorless for your mana pool. And my thinking is, like, this Wild Growth is enchanted onto the Crystal Vein, right? But, like, you have to, like, tap and sacrifice the land. And when you do that, the land just kind of, the aura just disappears and isn't really around to see it tapping for mana. And I am then assuming that it doesn't add an additional green. I could be wrong, but that's going to be my answer.
Ding, ding, ding. You are correct. Sweet. Wild Growth will not be attached to anything in order to see as this resolves, giving it an extra mana.
Woo! I'm happy.
I guess the extra green, specifically.
Yeah. Sweet.
So, yeah, you did get that one correct. Alright. Now, next question. Alright, so you control a Doubling Season. Pretty good card.
Yeah.
And so this says it's an enchantment, costs 4 and a green. If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. And it also has another line of text. If an effect will put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. Alright. So it doubles tokens and doubles counters.
Mm-hmm.
You control this. You cast Tamio Completed Sage, who is a legendary planeswalker, costs 2 green, Phyrexian green Simic, or Phyrexian Simic hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Phyrexian green or a Phyrexian blue, and then an additional blue. It has the completed, which states that if you either pay, you can either pay with green, blue, or 2 life. If you pay with the life, the planeswalker enters with 2 fewer loyalty counters. I'm not going to read all of her abilities because those are irrelevant, but she also has 5 loyalty.
Alright.
So, you cast her, paying the 2 life. How many counters will Tamio enter the battlefield with? And then bonus, so basically 2-part question. Bonus, what if I control a Vorinclex Monstrous Raider, who is 4 green, trample haste, and the text you care about is if an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down.
Okay, so these are all very much like commander cards, so I should be able to get this right. Tamio is cast. You pay the 2 life.
Yes.
Yeah, and so by that reasoning, I think Tamio enters with 3 loyalty, and then the doubling season sees that and makes it 6. So that's gonna be like my first answer is 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you if you're right or wrong there? And then maybe you'll change your answer based on Vorinclex?
Sure.
Okay. You are actually incorrect.
Oh.
This was kind of a tricky one, and there's not many scenarios with this because there's only a handful of completed planeswalkers.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to choose kind of which would happen first. You can have her enter, yes. So you can have her enter with the 5, multiply that by 2, and then take off 2. So she could come in with 8.
Damn.
Yeah, this is another scenario where it kind of works in the way that you want it to work. For your benefit. So, knowing that,
shit.
What happens now with Vorinclex?
So assuming all of that, Tamio. Yeah, now it's tricky now because I gotta figure out like what, like maybe like which applies first, the doubling season or the Vorinclex. I feel like I've played Commander enough. I should know the answer, but I don't. So Tamio enters with 5. Let's say it's. I'm just gonna go with it's doubled to 10, and then it's like halved again, rounding down. So would it be like 5 again? That's what I'm gonna say.
Are you counting for the -2 from her being paid for 2 life? Did you take that into account?
Yeah, I don't. Now that I know this explanation, I still am like equally confused though. So I'm just gonna say 5 for the second part. You'll tell me.
So, here's what would happen.
Okay.
Vorinclex would have to go first, because it's mine.
Okay.
And my effects would apply first in this scenario. So,
Do you know why that is?
5.
Like, why your opponent's stuff happens first versus your own?
I just know that's the rule.
Okay.
Because
we'll
it's
roll
kind of
with
like at the beginning of the. It's kind of like when you have like upkeep triggers, and it's like if I had something that said like at the beginning of each upkeep, my upkeep trigger would trigger before your upkeep trigger.
that. I do know that one.
So-
Yep.
Okay. So so 5 is the initial. So Vorinclex is like half that. So 5 5 halved is 2.5. Goes down to 2 because you round down. So now it's 2. Now it's basically back to kind of the scenario we were at before, where you can double before you take away the 2. Because if you take away the 2 first, that's 0. So you would double to 4, but then go down back to 2, because you have to take away 2 from paying the white. So in that scenario, it doesn't do much for you.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way my answer is correct because like my answer is too simple, and I'm like, there's, but I'm like, I don't know what else it would be. So yeah, all right, cool. Learn something new. If I ever build a Planeswalker deck and I just have tons of money, I'll know what to do.
Specifically completed Planeswalkers.
Yeah. Honestly, like a lot of the completed Planeswalkers aren't half bad for a Planeswalker tribal or typal deck.
Yeah. I'm actually impressed that you said that. I wasn't sure if you were privy to that typal tribal thing yet. But good on you for correcting yourself. We'll talk about that another time, though. Alright, so I guess I've gotten 4, you've gotten 3, and now it's time for the hard stuff, like the really hard stuff.
Yeah, here we go. So, we're playing Commander, and you cast Grasp of Fate, exiling each of your opponent's commanders.
That's best case scenario. Also, just
That doesn't always happen.
rarely happen.
But we're living in magical Christmas land, all right? You're able to target each of your opponent's stuff. They don't have any like protection on it. You can just target them. They're easy pickings. Your opponents have their commanders go back to the command zone, each of their command zones. Later on in the game, Grasp of Fate is later destroyed by a Croson Grip. All right, I'll read these cards. So Grasp of Fate is 1 white for an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So Grasp of Fate comes in, and basically all your opponents' commanders are targeted by Grasp of Fate, and they're basically put back in the command zone. And then later in the game, Croson Grip, which is a 2 and a green instant with split second. As long as the spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities, and it says destroy target artifact or enchantment. So Croson Grip destroys Grasp of Fate. How many commanders return to the battlefield? How many commanders are just like automatically pulled back onto the battlefield with the destruction of Grasp of Fate?
Alright, and to clarify, all the commanders went back to the command zone. They did not remain in exile with Grasp of Fate.
Correct.
Okay, I think I initially read that as 2 of them went back to the command zone.
You did, because I wrote the question poorly, so that's on me.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. As long as because I had to change my answer a little, but basically, none of them return. That is, I'm locking that in, and that is because, yeah, okay, so I am saying this because I believe, since Grasp of Fate exiles those cards, and then the players choose to move those cards to a new zone, when Grasp of Fate is gone, no one's getting their commander back. Final answer.
Ding, 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 ding. You're on it. You're on it.
All right.
I'm glad I made you a little bit nervous, though. So you are correct that none of the commanders return automatically with the destruction of Grasp of Fate.
I was a little worried initially because you said, I totally forgot, like, Crossing Grip has Split Second, and then I was like, oh, shit, does this actually change something? Because I thought then, like, do I not have the ability to then come back onto the field? But that shouldn't actually affect. You just kind of picked Crossing Grip, I think.
So that's why I made this a hard question. I was like, I can choose any removal spell. I'm gonna make Guy a little nervous. I'm gonna put Grasp of Fate because Split Second has a lot of like weird niche rulings that we, for whatever reason, chose not to get into this episode about rules questions. But I'm like, Split Second has rules issues. I'm gonna just throw it in here as like a psych sucker to maybe make you doubt yourself, and it worked.
Well, it worked, but I still got it right.
Yeah, I mean, that still counts, right? Like, you know, there's the art to creating a difficult trivia question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
now I'm really nervous for this next one, though, because like this next one that you're about to ask is like, I feel like it's
the question.
It's like the question. Like, all right, hold on. Yeah, you gotta.
I gotta explain this one first.
Ask your question.
Well,
yeah.
I want to fully explain this one first. So, like, none of the commanders return from the command zone. And part of the reason this is a hard question is because this ruling actually has changed over the years. They changed it so commander going to the command zone from exile is no longer a replacement effect. Therefore, when you choose to remove the commander from exile to put it into the command zone, any temporary exile effect loses track of it. So before, it worked because the commander never changed zones from where the like Vanishing Light effect, Grasp of Fate effect sort of was like put it. Therefore, like the enchantment was able to return the commander later. But like I said, that's changed. The ruling actually changed on this one. So I thought like any old time players of Commander might be a little bit like, fuck. And even if you're newer, like maybe you're new and you don't know that and still kind of get psyched out by it. It's a weird one, you know?
Yeah, I know that this has been...
And it comes up in my Sigarda games because I play Grasp of Fate in it, and people always ask me like, okay, so now that we've gotten rid of Grasp of Fate, does like my commander get automatically pulled onto the battlefield? And I very happily just go, no.
It has to remain in exile. Like you have to choose to keep it there, which is kind of like
yes.
It is a decision you have to think about every game because it's like, well, do I think someone's going to get rid of the Grasp of Fate, or will I have to get rid of the Grasp of Fate in order for my commander to come back, or will I have to just recast from the command zone?
Yeah, it's like I'll cast Grasp of Fate, and then like, Guy, you'll be like, I have an answer to the Grasp of Fate, but how confident am I that it's going to resolve and like actually work? Because if it doesn't work, like if it gets countered, like my Perforos is just like stuck in exile indefinitely, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, exiling commanders specifically is kind of like, with cards like this, it's like, you know, there is a chance, but yeah, especially in Perforos, I'd be like, I need to either... I would probably Perforos back in the command zone, because like, red does not deal with enchantments, so I'd have to be like,
right.
I don't want other people to... I don't want to rely on other people, basically.
Mm-hmm. Alright.
Oh god.
Guy,
okay.
Your last question for all the marbles.
Hit me.
So I knew that you were basically going to get all of these right, because you're a smart lad.
Thank you.
And I'm like, alright, I need to give him one that like is pretty much impossible to like know. So, if you control both humility and opalescence, what is going to be humility's characteristics? So, I'm going to read the errata text for both of these cards. Humility and opalescence are both enchantments. And humility is 2 white that says all creatures lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Opalescence, it costs 2 white and says each other non-aura enchantment is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and base toughness each equal to its mana value. So, relatively simple yet very complicated. How do you answer this?
Alright. So here's the thing too. I know I've watched videos about this question before, but I feel like it's just so complicated that I cannot retain the information. So at some point I feel like I could have maybe answered this, and then it's just it hasn't come up in a while, and now I'm like, oh god, I know that this question is really difficult. And we told her, and I said before, we do not look up the specific scenarios of the questions that are being asked. So when I saw this, I was like, I am going to take my best stab at it with only the information that is in front of me.
Yeah.
I am not going to watch a video essay on what happens.
Because it would be, yeah.
Because I was like, I wanted to challenge myself, because I wanted to see, can I get this right? Alright, so my instinctual answer is to say that humility would be a creature with base power and toughness 1/1, because that is what you're asking. What is humility's characteristics? And I believe that this is because opalescence and humility, there are 2 effects happen on different layers. Opalescence adds onto card types, which is a layer above the granting and taking away abilities layer. So opalescence would also remain and make all enchantments currently on the field 1/1s. But then humility would also take away all their abilities. So you would just basically have a bunch of vanilla 1/1s. And any new enchantment that would come, I know you didn't ask this, if any new enchantment would enter the battlefield afterwards, it would not become a creature. Final answer.
Alright, yeah, this was quite the doozy. I really just tried to screw you over on this one. I'll say ding.
Okay.
I'll give you half credit. That's
okay. That's better than I actually was expecting. So
yeah.
Cool.
Because you're spot on. It's all about layers. Ogres are like layers. Yeah, it's really all about layers, which is the thing you only really know about if you play a whole bunch of Magic and have been a bunch around Magic players. So I'm going to give an explanation. Do not ask me to elaborate. So opalescence works in layer 4, and humility works in layer 5, and they each work in layer 7B. Again, I don't really know exactly what those layers do, but that's the truth. So it also depends. It also depends on. I don't know if you've heard the term timestamps. So whichever one enters first or second.
Oh, I did not think that mattered, because I thought the timestamps would only matter if they were on the same layer. So that's interesting.
Yes, as I understand and have read and been told, if humility entered first, it is a 4/4, and if humility entered second, it is a 1/1. And so, your answer was it enters as a 1/1. So because of that, I'm going to give you half credit. Or that is true. It also depends on if it entered second. If it entered first, it's a 4/4.
So if it entered first, it's a 4/4. If it entered second, it's a 1.
Yes. So if you really think about it,
interesting.
If you think about it, you had a 50-50 chance of getting it right if you really thought hard, right?
Yes. Or the other thing that I thought, and I was like, this can't be the answer, because I feel like this would I almost thought is this just going to go back and forth creating a game state that then makes the game unplayable? And I was like, I don't think that's the answer, though, because I do know that this is a scenario that's come up enough where I have not heard that being the answer, or like basically the outcome. So I was pretty confident that that wasn't it, but that was actually what I was kind of thinking initially. I was like, would this not just create a loop back and forth? But okay. Cool. Good.
Yeah, honestly, like if anything in Magic would like create an infinite loop, it almost seems like maybe this would be it, right? But I do remember like when we transitioned from like Yu-Gi-Oh to Magic, I really enjoyed how the rules were written to where like it's actually nearly impossible for like there to be an infinite unbreakable loop in the rules of Magic. Whereas with Yu-Gi-Oh it's super fucking easy. I remember really appreciating that. I'm like, oh, thank God we don't have to worry about like non-endable game states.
I've only, in the 6 years I played Magic, I've only come across that once. And it was like one of those it was like with Polyraptor, and it like had a creature enter the battlefield, it dealt damage to itself. Create a copy. Like it's that one.
Yeah, Polyraptor.
But I do know that there's very few of those though where yeah. Okay. Cool. Alright. So thank God for layers, I guess. Now it's time to stump you, Blake.
Oh God.
Alright. I like this question a lot. Alright. It's a pretty complicated one, and I'm going to do my best to paint this scenario for someone who is listening. Alright. You, Blake, control a Sylvan Library. Sylvan Library is a green enchantment. It says at the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life, or put the cards on top of your library. In your graveyard, you have Life from the Loam, which is a green sorcery, and the part you care about is Dredge 3, and I'll read Dredge. If you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise draw a card. And you have Golgari Grave Troll in your graveyard, which the part you care about here is Dredge 6. Now, I control a Narset Parter of Veils, which is a planeswalker that says each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Can you dredge the Life from the Loam and Golgari Grave Troll, then draw a card for the 3rd draw? If you can, how much life would it cost to keep everything? And I gave you 4 options, because I thought that would just make it easier.
Yeah.
Alright, so A, this is legal, and you must pay 8 life. B, this is legal, and you must pay 4 life. C, legal, you must pay 0 life. And D, this is illegal, you cannot do this. What is your answer?
So I'm going to say D, illegal, can't do this. So there's a lot of cards, right? There's like Sylvan Library, there's Life of the Loam, there's Golgari Grave Troll, there's Narset. So if we're talking 4 cards here, I do know that cannot statements override can. So to begin with, Narset says each opponent cannot draw more than 1 card each turn, and that's going to basically override Sylvan Library's ability to draw extra cards. So also Dredge is like a replacement effect, and you can't replace those draw triggers if they can't happen in the first place, caused by Narset. So I think I'm kind of stuck just drawing 1 card per turn, even though I have Sylvan Library out. Therefore, I cannot replace their draw triggers with the Dredge 3 and Dredge 6. So that's why I said illegal and I cannot do it.
How confident are you in this answer?
Not very.
Well, Blake, ding ding ding, you got that right. And you were pretty spot on with that. I am very impressed. I also when I saw this question, this was a question I took from Twitter. I was not too confident, and I also said D, because I was pretty sure, basically what you said. But yeah, you cannot do that. It is illegal, so you would only be able to draw the one card. You cannot replace the things that you cannot do to begin with, even though you are technically not drawing more than one card each turn.
Oh, that makes me so happy, because I play Sylvan Library a lot. It's just such a weird card. It's the classic example of like, man, WotC really printed this card and really had no idea like what their rules were at the beginning of when they first created this game, and now it's become popular, and now they have to like make it make sense in the rules of the current landscape.
Not only that, but it's just also like green lets you draw 3 cards a turn for like 8 life. Like, that's kind of broken for green too. Like, green would never get that nowadays.
Yeah, sometimes you just get down Sylvan Library early, and it's just like it's worth the 8 life because you start at 40 life in Commander, and you're just like able to kind of steamroll everybody. Also, I was a little bit like, I don't know if this works because Golgari Grave Troll is technically banned in Commander.
Golgari Grave Troll's not banned in Commander. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, you're probably right.
Why would Golgari Grave Troll of all cards be banned in Commander? I don't see a line of text that, like, I guess like I could have replaced this with like Leovold, Narset with Leovold, and then that's like, okay, Leovold's banned in Commander. But Golgari Grave Troll, like, amazing.
I don't know why. I'm thinking of what's the card I'm thinking of that I'm mixing up? Is it Sylvan Primordial or maybe Amulet Titan? Not Amulet Titan. What's the name of it? Primeval Titan.
Yeah, both of those are banned. Yes.
Yeah, those are like the big dumb green creatures I'm thinking about. I think
yes. Golgari Grave Troll sees very little to no EDH play. Yeah. I just needed to find 2 instances of a good Dredge card, and Dredge 3, Dredge 6. Yeah. Life from the Low. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, alright, feeling good. Alright, last question. Alright, so you, Blake, cast a Bootlegger Stash, the most broken card in EDH that's ever been printed. Which
Confirmed.
is a green artifact that says, lands you control have tap, create a treasure token. You already have Blood Sun on the battlefield. Blood Sun is an enchantment that says, all lands lose all abilities except mana abilities. So, Blood Sun's already on the field. You cast Bootlegger Stash. Comes into play.
Okay.
Can you tap a land for a treasure token? And would this change if it was the reverse order with Bootlegger Stash already on the field? Then you cast Blood Sun.
So when I was asking earlier about like opulescence and humility, like timestamps, which comes in first or last, like you're doing that to me now.
Yes. Yes, I am.
How dare you use my own logic against me?
You mean like the rules of the game? Sure.
Yes.
The thing that we're supposed to be talking about this episode? I'm sorry I'm doing that. Sorry, I'm following the rules. I don't have money, so I can't screw them.
Oh, God. Deep cut right there. Alright, so... I want to say I'm not sure. I want to say Bootlegger's Stash doesn't actually give a mana ability. Like, making your lands capable of creating treasure tokens isn't actually a mana ability. So, that being said, Blood Sun would remove that ability. So your lands could not create treasure. As far as the second part of the question, I'm not sure. I'm gonna say whichever one entered first. Maybe this is a trick question. Maybe it actually doesn't matter. You know, that's what I'm gonna go with. It actually doesn't matter. I'm gonna say this is a trick question, and it doesn't matter which one comes in first.
Well, You are incorrect.
Ah!
It would matter, actually, which one came in. So both of these happen on the same layer. We're going back to layers 2.
Layers.
Where it grants and takes away abilities. So, if Blood Sun was on the field before Bootlegger Stash, Blood Sun has taken away all the abilities from lands, except mana abilities. So, that's that. Bootlegger Stash comes onto the field, and then it checks timestamps, and then it allows it to grant all lands to have the ability to create a treasure token, and then vice versa. If Bootlegger Stash was on the field, giving all the lands tap create a treasure token, Blood Sun would remove all of those if it came in afterwards. So I feel like you had some of the you had like the foundations of kind of a DI out of a ding. So you got like half of a third.
I got a diff.
So like a diff.
I'll take it. As long as I'm not flat out completely wrong.
I think you definitely had kind of the as I read your answer, I was like, okay, I think he's kind of onto it, but the technical answer that you gave is not fully correct.
Okay, I can live with that. You know, Bootlegger Stash is like borderline OP in Commander. Should obviously be banned, and like I see it all the time. So like that's why like I'm just so confident in my answer.
Just ban all cards that say create a treasure token.
Oh God! Not
forbid.
Not doing this discourse again. That was dumb.
That's at this point it's like over a year. Like when?
Yeah,
but this card's been out for more than a year.
I remember.
I've never seen anyone play it. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all of them, and we're at kind of a good time. This took longer than I thought.
We've been having fun.
Yeah, it's been fun, for sure. I guess, like, maybe we'll do this again in the future, because I feel like this was, like, we gotta work our brains a little. I feel like we're not experts, so it's kind of, like, fun to, like, test ourselves, and... Yeah, I mean, is there anything, like, you feel like you are really surprised about from what we just talked about, or... Like, do you think, like, everything kind of makes sense?
I'll say this. Between all the card games that I've played, the rules of Magic, and people can disagree with me on this, actually makes probably the most intuitive sense when you compare it to things like Yu-Gi-Oh! When you compare it to things like Pokemon. Like, when it comes down to the rulings, as complex as this game can be, the rules makers actually do a very good job of being able to make it feel intuitive. That is why I've been able to play for years and not be able to fully understand the rules and still be able to play and finish games and not get hung up on like game interactions and like still have a fun time. And I think that's great because it's like that's how I want to play. I personally don't like 1v1 competitive formats where like I need to know like all these niche rules interactions. I can understand the point of view of people who do. It makes them feel like they're a really smart player and really validates them like when they do know that sort of stuff and motivates them to be more knowledgeable and better as a person. I'm personally more of like a chill guy who wants to just like hang out with friends, drink beer and pretzels, and so both kinds of players are good. I think I definitely did not know all of these, but like if they happened in a game, like even if we got them wrong, if we collectively were like we don't know and like it's too difficult to figure out by looking online, we still have fun. I think that's what matters.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely like that's what Commander's all about. It's about having fun. Maybe you get a rules thing wrong here or there. Maybe it affects the outcome of the game.
It doesn't really matter. And remember, the next time you're watching a like Commander gameplay video and they mess up, don't be like a weird person and just like,
Actually, this
actually.
is because of 70456CA. Fuck you.
Nothing is a bigger sign to me that you have nothing better to do with your life than make comments like that. It's like the stakes have never been lower. Why are you making this comment?
Yeah, if the game's fun, you're having a good time, like...
It doesn't really matter.
Yes.
With Commander.
And to your point, like, yeah, I think, for most of these rules, I feel like intuitive, like, until we got to the harder questions, like, intuitively, we were able to figure it out just based on, like, instinct and what we felt, and I think that's a sign to how well the game works, because you don't need the most in-depth rules knowledge, but things like this do come up, and nobody can ever know everything about this. Like, I know, yeah, it's a tough game. Don't get up on people's dicks about it. I don't know.
Oh, Guy, I have a quick question for you.
Oh God, not another one.
Another one. Yeah, the secret bonus round question. No,
extra hard.
I'm joking. Nothing can be harder than opalescence plus humility. My question is...
I already forget the correct answer.
My question is, when you've gone to, like, Command Fest and played games, have you ever, like, raised your hand for, like, judges to help you, like, answer, like, rules questions?
Only once.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually because we were playing the new precons for Lord of the Rings, and the One Ring came up quite often. And that's already, like, a new mechanic, and we just didn't really know, because a lot of that stuff hadn't happened yet. And, like, the whole group was, like, cool with it, too, because it's kind of like, hey, what happens in this scenario? I don't know. Do you know? We kind of looked at each other and was like, alright, let's call a judge. So we communicated that pretty well into then being like, hey, we really don't know what's about to happen. Let's get an expert in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was just kind of curious. I say that because I've been to a number of Command Fests where, like, you're playing with a whole bunch of strangers at, like, these well-run events. We'll have these super complicated board states of Commander, and no one's really quite sure just because things are so complex, and so, like, we'll raise our hands and have, like, try and get, like, a judge. It may take a minute or two. They'll come over, and I'd say about half the time they're able to answer the question, and then the other half, like, they gotta spend like a couple minutes on their phone just, like, looking up each card and just, like, reading the rulings and just seeing how they interact. The main point of the story is just, like, when it comes to Commander, like, these judges are so used to, like, judging Modern or Standard or other formats, so that when they go to these Command Fests, it's like oftentimes it's these super weird niche cards that they've, like, never seen. They're having all these, like, niche interactions with each other, and it's a multiplayer format, so it's super, like, complex board states. And so I say all this respect to judges, like, much more than I do, like, but it's like, sometimes even you can stump the judges.
Oh, for sure, because, like, if you're doing a Modern tournament or even, like, a Legacy tournament, like, you kind of expect some decks to have, like, some interactions.
Yeah. Or even just the same type of cards.
Right. But in, like, Commander, like, you have access to all these cards. There's not only just, like, 2 players, there's 2 more players. God forbid there's, like, 5 players, like, taking that into account. So, yeah, all the respect to the judges to, like, figure this out, because shit's hard. Shit is hard.
Yeah, mad respect. Alright. What about you? Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I had a lot of fun. I feel like totally could do this again in the future and come up with even more scenarios. Like, this was great. Yeah, I had a fun time. Like, it's nice to do this versus just, like, let's talk about
another set
what just happened, Commander Masters. Like, it's just fun to, like, kind of, like, do things that aren't in the hype, or the hype of the set. So if you liked it, I don't know, we'll do it again. I don't care.
You're like, I don't care, we're doing it anyways.
So, we are the Wizard Staff. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave a like and review. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at wizardstaff101.com.
The Bird app?
The Bird app. The X app. Send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are. Thank you for listening. We hope you have a great night. Peace.
Peace out.